Something you can do today to boost your email reputation and reduce the likelihood that your email will show up in your client's spam folders is to make sure that the clients you're emailing are engaged clients. An engaged client is someone who has indicated they're interested in what you have to say. There are lots of ways a client can engage: by opening an email, clicking on a link, purchasing your product, or filling out a web form. They've signaled that it's okay to communicate with them. The longer it's been since a client last engaged with you, the more likely that client is no longer engaged and may mark your email as spam. Review your list and remove clients that opted out. If you continue to market people who don't want to hear from you, your email reputation will suffer, which will impact your ability to reach those clients that do want to hear from you. The content you're sending is one of the most important factors in maintaining a high email deliverability score and determining if your emails make it in your inbox or land in a spam folder. There are 5 things to keep in mind when writing an email. First, do not send emails from a public domain like gmail.com, msn.com, yahoo.com, and others. Use your business domain in the from address. Next, match the subject line with the body copy in the email. If the subject line makes a promising offer and it's nowhere in the email, you lose that client's trust and you might get dinged by your email service provider. You don't want to get dinged. They both need to match. Third, use your company branding in the email. It can be jarring when people see an email that doesn't follow your company style. It's also something email service providers will ding you for. Fourth, follow the 80-20 rule. 80% text, 20% image. Avoid creating emails that have 3 lines of text and a giant image. Lastly, make the unsubscribe link easy to find. An important factor in determining whether an email that you send to a client goes to their inbox or to the spam folder is the reputation of your business domain. Your domain reputation is one way email service providers decide whether or not they will deliver your email message to your subscribers. It's a good idea to check your domain regularly to make sure your domain is in good standing with lookup tools. There are many tools that you can use to check your domain. MX Lookup is a good place to start. If you find you're blacklisted, you'll want to get more information about what you can do to become delisted or taken off a blacklist. Like we said before, your business's email reputation is like a credit score. To keep your score high, it's essential you respect the wishes of those who receive your emails. If you don't, recipients may mark your message as spam. To see your complaints, contact your email service provider. Additionally, when someone unsubscribes, it's a great idea to use a survey asking why. Taken in total, these comments are a great indicator of where you can improve your email practices. Are they saying that they never signed up for your mail or that they already unsubscribed from your list? It might be an indication that you need to review your lists. Are they saying that you send too much or too often? It might be time to look at the content of your emails and how frequently you send them. Make sure that you periodically review your complaints and adjust your email practices accordingly. Visit our blog for more ways to protect your email reputation.
Evan, did you put your pants on?
Backwards. All righty. Hello, Facebook. How you doing today? We are back for day 3 on email deliverability, and we will be keeping straight faces today. So today we're talking about the 3 pillars of email deliverability. My name is Evan Samrin. For those of you who have not been on the last 2 or not active in the Keap user group, you might not know me, so I'll give you a little bit about myself. So again, my name is Evan Samrin. I am the founder of Fundamental Marketing. I've been working with Infusionsoft 9 years, coming up on 10. Started off Fundamental Marketing, focusing on email deliverability back in November of 2017. Email deliverability is my sole focus. It's all I do. Live, sleep, breathe deliverability. And I do that in Las Vegas, Nevada. There are more things in Vegas besides casinos and shiny lights. So email deliverability happens there. And if you ever have questions, you can see my email. You can absolutely reach me there. And before we dive into the content today, we've got 2 amazing guests joining us. So standing next to me, you can maybe see his shoulder in me or mine and his. I've got Jordan Hatch, and then I've got Adrian Savage. So I want those guys to introduce themselves real quick. Jordan did a whole session yesterday about keeping your list clean. Adrian's coming up tomorrow to talk about engagement and some really cool tools that you can use to help track that. So real quick, I'm going to have Jordan and Adrian introduce themselves before we get into some content. So Jordan, take it away.
Thanks. What's up, everybody? I'm Jordan Hatch. I'm the owner of Full Stack Marketing and listcleaner.io. Yesterday, I ran the call yesterday to talk about cleaning your list. And I want to just one thing point out. like an obvious thing is that if you were on the previous calls, it looks different. We're actually in the studios today at Keap headquarters. Evan came down into town and he's crowding in on my shot. And so, yeah, we decided, hey, let's flip the script a little bit and make the social media team do a little bit of extra work at Infusionsoft today.
Oh, it's been fun.
So we're here from the headquarters at Keap. Adrian unfortunately couldn't jump on a plane fast enough to get out here from the UK. But anyway, that's who I am, and that's why we're here. And Adrian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, Jordan. So yeah, I'm a little bit far away from you guys over in the UK in the Midlands. So I'm Adrian Savage. I've been involved in the Infusionsoft and the Keap scene for about 8 years or so now. For the last 5 years or so, I've been doing a lot on email deliverability, and now, very similar to Evan, that is pretty much all that I do. My focus is a lot more on the tools and the systems that will help you with your deliverability. So I've got lots of great tools, reports. I'll be talking about some of that tomorrow when I'm talking about how you can really maximize your engagement. I won't say much more today. There'll be plenty of cool stuff tomorrow, but there's even more cool stuff right now from Evan. So I shall hand back to you, Mr. Samurin. Take it away.
Thank you, and thank you for pronouncing my name properly. It's always nice. See, English and American goes well together. We can make it all work. So real quick, so as you guys can see, the game of deliverability has changed, and that's something that you got to understand. What has worked for the last decade, you cannot do anymore. This year has really been a year of change for email. Machine learning has heavily come into play. There's been tons of shifts in algorithms, acquisitions, and the thing you have to realize is what worked before is not going to work any further. And if you continue on the paths that you're on, it's just the law of diminishing returns. You're going to slowly see less and less. So the sooner you get on board, the sooner you're going to see increase in your returns on what you're doing from a marketing perspective. So let's start with this, and let's start with the assumption. There's this assumption that's really made in the marketplace with Keap and frankly any marketing tool that you use. And that assumption is that, hey, all I have to do is load my list into Keap, craft my email, and hit send. And as a marketing person, that's my sole responsibility. And unfortunately, that is not the case. There are lots of things that you as a business owner and a marketer have to be paying attention to if you want to be successful in getting emails to an inbox. Now, if you don't care where those emails land, like the spam folder, well, don't pay attention. But I don't think anyone who's taken the time to be here is in that boat. So please pay attention. So with my clients, the first question I always get is there any way at all to guarantee an email makes it to the inbox every time I hit send? And that answer is no. And Yahoo says it straight out, right in their help articles. How can I guarantee my email gets delivered to the Yahoo inbox? And they basically say the short answer is you can't, because you've got content filters, you've got domain reputation, you've got spam filter configurations on the receiving end. There's so many things going on that are working to keep bad email out. So we got to figure out what are the red flags that could keep my email out and how do we get them lowered? And that's what we're going to talk about now. The 3 key items that you have to pay attention to if you want to get your email delivered. And I'm going a little quick. There's a lot to cover. I couldn't shorten this down from 3 to 1 because these are all equally important. But if you've got questions, you saw my email earlier, ask questions, put in the comments. We're here to help. So what are the 3 things you got to pay attention to? Authentication, reputation, and content. Those are the 3 pillars of email deliverability. And the hard thing is not any one of them is a silver bullet to solve a problem. So just think, if your authentication isn't set up right, solving the authentication piece isn't going to fix your deliverability issues 100%. Fixing your reputation is not going to fix it 100%. You've got to be paying attention to everything. So let's talk about authentication. What makes up authentication? We're going to get a little bit technical, but I promise I won't make your brains explode.
That's a lot of acronyms on the screen.
I know it is, and I didn't make them up. They're actually real. They're existing. So SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Those are the 3 items that you have to have in place to authenticate emails. And basically what those do is that says, hey, receiving mailbox provider, I'm paying attention to the emails I send, and here is what I authenticate for you to accept if it's from my domain. And SPF records say that. DKIM records say that. in different ways, and I'm not going to get into the whole technical jargon, other than the fact that you need to have them in place. If you don't know how to put them in place, you can hop on my blog, fundamental.marketing/blog. There's a great article on that, or you could reach out for help. But SPF and DKIM are the two primary authentication methods. DMARC is an aligner, and it's kind of like this umbrella that looks at SPF and DKIM and then tells the mailbox providers how you want them to handle email that they receive from you if it doesn't pass either SPF or DKIM. And I'm not going to get geeky now because I want you guys to stick around. But in short, 3 authentication protocols that you have to have in place: SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. If you don't have those, you will have some challenges getting your emails through. Jordan, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's one other thing. One other reason why it's really important to have those things set up as well is that it keeps spammers from spoofing emails. That's actually what the SPF record is primarily designed to do. But it's not difficult for someone to send an email from me, like I was the one that sent it, if you have those things, if you don't have those things set up. So it's a deliverability thing, but it's also a protection and a security thing for you and for your business. You know, I could go and send an email from Clayt@keap.com if I wanted to. Keap obviously has that stuff set up, but if they didn't have that, I could go send out and emails and tell the world that something bad, or send them depose King of Nigeria emails or something like that. So there's more reasons than just inbox placement. It's also a protection for you as well.
Absolutely. And the other thing to think about here is you don't just have to authenticate like Infusionsoft. Any system that you mail from, you need to properly authenticate. So that means if you're using Office 365 or G Suite, those have to have SPF and DKIM done. If you use a support ticketing system, if you're sending emails off of WordPress, like any system that you mail from has to be authenticated. And that's one of the big pieces I see people miss.
There's one massive mistake as well, isn't there, Evan, that is probably worth us picking up on, because you just said that you need an SPF record for each provider, but you never, ever, ever have more than one SPF record.
Correct.
You have one record that covers all the different providers. A lot of people misunderstand this, and they set up 2 or 3 SPF records,
which automatically makes it
crashing
fail.
down.
Yeah.
Tom just asked a question. How do we know if SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are set up? Maybe I'll answer the question. If you don't, you have to ask the question, then you don't have it set up. Yeah,
if you're asking the question, you probably don't know. But MX Toolbox is a good tool where you can check SPF and DMARC. You have to know more information to check DKIM, but we'll talk about that more in the questions on the tail end. The other thing to think of, and a lot of providers tell this wrong, is in SPF records, you have to authenticate for this infusionmail.com. Some people tell you no, you don't have to, because it's sending off of InfusionMail's SPF, but some of the providers are looking at that, and that does impact deliverability. So we'll talk about that more, in questions and comments if we want. But SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Yeah, and just real quick, the reason why I say if you have to ask the question, it probably isn't set up, is you have to intentionally go and set this up with your DNS provider. So another acronym that you may or may not know what that means, but your tech guy probably does. I know for a fact that Evan offers that service as well to go and set that stuff up for you. So I'd recommend. And you got to be careful, because if you mess up your authentication, you can actually block your emails from being able to be received. That actually happened. I've got 2 clients that someone set it up wrong. And they couldn't send they couldn't even send Gmail email. All of my emails that I was sending to Keap were getting blocked from my personal email address, because I messed up my DKIM and SPF records. So this stuff isn't something to play around with, and if you don't know it, find someone who does, because you can do more damage than help if you do it wrong. So that's pillar 1. Authentication. Next up, reputation. And there's 2 types of reputation that affect deliverability. There's IP reputation and there's domain reputation. Now, Infusionsoft and Keap are responsible for managing IP reputation. But the hard part for them, and why you get a lot of emails, or you may get an email from Keap, is the behavior of you as a sender impacts the reputation of the IPs. So that's why you've got that Keap and Infusionsoft mailing you, hey, we're seeing things that are hurting you. that are damaging your deliverability, because that actually impacts the reputation of the IPs. But what we're going to talk a little bit more about now is domain reputation, because domain reputation is 100% in your control. So what impacts reputation? And what really can you do to help win the popularity contest, which is really what it's turning down to? It's like a game show. It's like, am I going to get the golden buzzer on America's Got Talent and make it through the inbox? So what impacts reputation? You can see them on the screen. Authentication, SPF, DKIM, DMARC. User engagement. Are people opening your emails, clicking on links, forwarding your email, replying to your email, scrolling in the email? They see that, some of the providers. Do you have a lot of bounces? Do you have spam complaints? Is your list filled with spam traps? That ties into the next one. Are you practicing good list hygiene? And remember from Jordan's talk yesterday, list cleaning and list hygiene are two different things. List hygiene is looking at things like spam traps and bots and honeypots and malicious domains and these really vicious things that get into your list. And the hard part that you have to realize is that those come from valid emails. Good, valid emails today can go bad. And they actually go bad at a rate of about 30% a year. 30% of emails a year statistically go bad. And that could be either a business domain, so someone left a company and now they're not using that email anymore, or they had a Yahoo address that they used to use that they felt like they were getting way too much spam at, so created a new Yahoo address. Now that just sits there. Well, what happens when it sits there is that the Yahoo will eventually take that account over, and they'll do one of two things. They're going to deactivate it, and that email then hard bounces, or they recycle it and convert it into a spam trap. And if you're hitting spam traps with these providers, it will impact your ability to get messages to the inbox, especially on new subscribers coming into the system. So you've got to pay attention to list hygiene. The tool I use for that's called Clean13. You can check them out. Their website to look at is hygiene.clean13.com. Check it out. If you've got questions on it, let me know. Adrian has an integration there. I've got stuff that works with it. It's the only tool that I'll use. The other thing that impacts reputation is sending behavior. So what the mailbox providers like to see is they like to see nice, consistent, even sending. They don't like big peaks and little low valleys. They like to see consistency in your messaging. So having automation and leveraging Keap and leveraging Infusionsoft to have normal flow of emails going out helps you. Having that consistency makes a big difference. So reputation is key. Now, another little side tip here. Anything that you reference in your emails can affect the reputation of your deliverability. So if you're sending from fundamental.marketing and then inside of your email, you're sending to maybe a domain that's spamtrap.com. Well, if spamtrap.com has a bad reputation, that will impact the deliverability of your emails. I just had a client 2 weeks ago, Damien, if you're on here, hello. But his emails were all going to spam, even personal emails. And what we found and what fixed it for him was removing the 3 different URLs that he had in his email signature. The moment we took those additional URLs out of his email, everything went to the inbox. So every domain that you put in your email affects the ability to get it to the inbox because it's getting caught in the content filters, and that impacts the reputation of where that email goes. So hopefully that makes sense. Jordan, Adrian, anything to add there? Pretty much nail that one?
You're good.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm good with that. I think just the one thing I'll mention is we'll be talking a lot more about engagement tomorrow as well, and some of the tools that help there. So, this is kind of the starting point, but we could go so deep on this. I mean,
I
20, 30 minutes on Facebook Live isn't enough time, right?
It's not.
That's actually why I shut my mouth, because we could talk about that for there's all kinds of tips and tricks, and Evan's got great stuff on his blog, and I told him you need to set up a recurring meeting of here's the things that I'm seeing and stuff like that. So little gentle nudge to Evan to get his act together and get that going.
Well, one thing I'm going to say on engagement, everyone's going to tell you, you got to watch engagement. But the key to watching engagement is to catch lack of engagement early. You catch it early and you begin to re-engage. And when you re-engage, you have to understand a few things, and you kind of have to put yourself in the psyche of where the consumer is. If they're not reading your emails and opening and engaging, what they're telling you is, I'm not interested in what you're talking about. And you got to talk a different way. So if they've opted in, they said, hey, you're talking about a problem that I have that I think you might solve. And if they disengage, what they're telling you is, the way you're telling me to solve the problem doesn't align with me. So that's when you change what you're talking about. If you've dove deep into your customer avatars, you're going to know the 3 or 4 or 5 different pain points they have, and you'll know the different, solutions that they're looking for, what those shiny, happy futures look like, and you start talking about those things differently. And that's the key to engagement and re-engagement. Is catch it early, re-engage in different tones over a period of time, and then eventually don't be afraid to pull them out, which may mean go from emailing them once a week to once a month, and then once a month to once a quarter. And then if they go through that length and they don't engage, say goodbye, churn them away, because the only thing that mailing non-engaged people will do will limit your ability to reach new subscribers, because the machine learning is building the algorithms on those individuals, but it takes the learned behavior of everyone that you've mailed to and applies that to new people. That's where engagement helps, and that's where it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah. So there's a couple questions that people have been asking. Like, so for example, Sue says the bad spam trap emails were in his signature on the bottom of his emails, or can you kind of explain that again? Or?
Yeah. So spam traps and the links in emails were a little bit different. Spam traps are emails that he was sending to, potentially, and he didn't have that. Well, he did have spam traps, but that wasn't the primary issue. There was an issue with Hotmail. The issue that he had was he was emailing from, let's say, xyzdomain.com, but then he had links in his signature to abcdomain.com and 123.domain.com. And having those different links in the signature with different domains and different destinations caused the issue. Believe it or not, that's what caused the issue. The moment those extra domains were pulled, it was there. So the key for him was, when you're mailing from yourdomain.com, have links that direct to yourdomain.com, and that solved his problems. Right. So
quick mic tweak.
Quick mic tweak.
There you go, just get it off center. There you go.
I got off center. See what happens when you move around and the mic drops? The joys of it. You
Rookie.
gotta love it. We gotta love Ducey. Everyone, Ducey over here runs all the audio here. He's awesome. So make sure you say in the comments, "Great job, Ducey. We appreciate you." So,
and tell Evan to stop moving around.
I can't not move around. It just happens.
Or when you talk, you have to turn your body, not just your head.
I know.
Anyway, all right.
So moving on.
Real quick, one other question.
Yeah.
Mike asked a question: do you recommend removing non-engaged marketable and others from the database, opting them out, or tagging them? What's the best practice?
It depends. So the short answer is yes. At a certain period of time, you want to get them out. Now, I never recommend deleting people from the database, because data is power. You can upload those to Facebook and retarget them. You can upload them to Google and retarget them. If you're doing business B2B, you can upload them to LinkedIn and do LinkedIn direct mail through InMail or advertising. So there's so many ways to use the content. So don't delete it. Also, people go, well, should I just delete the spam traps and the other stuff? No, because you can create suppression lists off those. So if those bad submissions, like yesterday, Jordan was talking about bots. So if you got all these bot addresses that are submitted, you can put them on a suppression list. So if that bot ever hits you again, those emails will not come into your system. So data, even bad data, is powerful. To back answer your question, yes, after certain periods of time, you should opt people out and stop marketing them or tag them and exclude them.
Yeah, I think the key thing there, I can't remember his name, but the question was non-engaged marketable, right? There's a couple of different statuses. There's non-engaged marketable and non-engaged non-marketable, I think is what it says, or unmarketable,
yeah.
Right? The key thing here is you can't just say an opt-in is an opt-in is an opt-in, right? Or someone on my list is someone on my list is someone on my list. You have to treat people differently based on how engaged they are, right? So if someone moves from being an engaged customer, right? They filled out a form, they've clicked a link, they've opened an email, all that stuff, and they move into non-engaged, Well, they're telling you something by them not doing something. So what you need to do is treat them differently. Just like you would if they clicked a link in an email. If you build a campaign, right, you're going to treat somebody differently if they click a link in an email than those that don't. Those that don't click a link in an email should be treated differently as well. And that's where you need to have a funnel, like a nurture funnel that stays in touch with people outside of email, because they're obviously telling you, I'm not reading your stuff. Like, don't send me stuff because it's a waste of your time, right?
Think of it, Jordan, let me interrupt real quick. Think of it like you were having a one-to-one sales conversation. And imagine, you're a salesman and you're talking to someone and you're a car salesman and you're showing him a red car. And the guy goes, you know what? I really don't like red. Well, you're not going to talk about red anymore. You're going to go, great. Well, what colors do you like? Let's talk about those. Or what features do you like? Or what benefits you're looking for? So just imagine, like, if you were having that conversation one-to-one with someone in front of you, what would that look like? How would you change your tone? What are the different questions you would ask? What are the different responses you would give if they told you, hey, that's not really jiving with me? So just wanted to throw that out there, just kind of help you understand how to write.
Yeah. So there's a couple more questions. Sorry to, I know you got one more thing.
I know
actually, I think
this one goes into content.
Some of these questions. So
yeah. So I know Roxanne has a question on links, and we'll talk about that in a second. So let's hit on the third pillar, which is content. Content matters. Every one of these systems has content filters. So we're going to talk about that. So real quick, because I could do hours on content in itself. Here are some common content mistakes that happen. Number one, not personalizing emails. Believe it or not, that makes a difference. So one of the things, and Jordan talked about this yesterday, to help protect your data, ask for first name on an email, ask for phone numbers on email, get that additional data, because you can use that to personalize emails. So personalizing emails is something you want to do. Not doing it will hurt you. I know there's a question coming in about links. Too many links in an email can hurt you. So 2 to 3 links is ideally where you want to be. Social media links, which is where the question came in, does add to those. So what you have to do is kind of step back and look at the purpose of the content. There's different types of content that you're going to send. You're going to have sales emails. You're going to have newsletters. Well, newsletters by nature have 4, 6, 8, sometimes 10 links in them. Keep them that way. But sales letters have a very direct purpose. I want this person to take this next step. So keep them very short, in terms of links.
Can I make maybe a controversial recommendation? Stop sending newsletters. People don't freaking read them. Just don't do it. Like, your email should have one call to action, not 15. That's just my take.
True. So, and again, the content conversation can go on for days. I've been on a kick lately, and anyone that's talked to me knows that I'm telling people that they're using email incorrectly. People are using email. If you think of it like fishing, people are attempting to use email as the bait, the hook, the line, the rod, and the reel. And realistically, email is your bait. You want the email to really entice interest and get them to your next step, which is your sales page. And the sales page is your hook and the line and the reel that takes them to the next step. So that is another conversation. I think we've got next quarter's Facebook Live where we'll talk about content. But yeah, lose the number of links.
And just real quick, let me add to that. That's why I say don't send newsletters, right? Because here's the reality. You have a very short attention span with people when they're reading their emails. And if you're trying to get them to read through your newsletter and decide, oh, I want to click on this link but not that link or whatever, they're not going to do anything, right? You're giving them too many options. You're giving them too many decisions to make, and the mental capacity that they have, and I'm not saying that your readers are stupid. They just don't have that much bandwidth right now to try and decipher and get distracted by 15 different things. So the goal of every email that you send should be to get a click, right? The click can't happen if the open doesn't happen. So you have to use the subject line. The only thing that your open rate tells you is how good your subject line and your pre-header text is. That's it, right? That's the only thing that it'll tell you, is if you had a good subject line or a good pre-header, whatever. But the content of your email is what's going to get the click, right? So every email you send, And if you follow those recommendations of that Evan has there on the screen, the goal of your email should be to get a click. Clicks and opens equal engagement.
Yep. Let's go through these quickly because I know there's a lot of questions coming in. So common mistakes to not make. Do not use link shorteners, bit.ly, things like that. Those are known spammers. So spammers are always here. If you ever clicked on a spam email, you'll see the URL circle and change like 10 times. It's because they're redirecting the URL. That's what link shorteners do. So if you use those, there's this guilt by association. And we talked about this a little bit the other day. The mailbox provider's definition of a spammer is different than what our definition of a spammer is. So if there's behaviors that we know spammers do, like link shorteners, like having only images in the email and the text is in the images, don't do those things because you're going to get treated like a spammer. So don't use link shorteners. Bad subject lines will get you caught up. Poor preview text. Using spam phrases like buy now, click here, save 20% today, get this free. Think of like if you were going to hear it on an infomercial with a guy screaming at the top of his lungs, it's probably not the best thing to put inside of an email.
Are you saying I can't sell my Viagra, my Cialis and stuff like that, Evan? Or does it go to spam?
Yeah, that stuff's just bad. Don't put that in an email. Just don't do it. The other thing, too much punctuation. I
wanted you to read that the way that it's written on the screen.
Too much punctuation. Don't do too much. Even things like I had an email that got flagged from someone in testing where they had an exclamation point and then a few more words and then a question mark. And that combination of an exclamation point and a question mark in the subject line got it flagged in the spam filters and moved it to a promotions folder.
We saw some stuff when we were doing some tests the other day that had when there was brackets in the subject line too.
Brackets in the subject. I hate that one. Like sometimes people do brackets to say,
urgent
or newsletter or something, course 1217. And it automatically flags stuff. So avoid punctuation. Like I said, we can probably do like a week on content. But I think the important thing to realize here is and you're starting to see this, there's a lot that goes in to deliverability. And there's lots of flags that you could get potentially raised. And your job as a sender is to say, okay, what are the red flags and how can I lower as many as possible before I hit send to increase my chance of getting an email there? So what do you need to do now before we get some questions? 3 things you got to look at: authentication, reputation, and content. Authentication, and it's pretty much a one-time thing with authentication. Get your SPF, DKIM, and DMARC set up for every system that you mail from. Reputation, certain things that you could look at. Pay attention to your bounce rates. If your bounce rates are near or above 2%, red flag that you got something going on. Watch your click-through rates and look for general declines over time. Don't look at it, I normally have a 3% click rate and this email I had a 1. I've got a bad problem. No, it might not. You could have had a bad email. But if you go from 3% to 2.2% to 2.1% to 1.8% and you see a general decline, red flag, you've got deliverability stuff going on. Watch your complaint rates. High complaints and spam complaints is the worst thing that can happen to hit your reputation. Unfortunately, not all complaints get reported back to Keap, namely Google, which probably makes up 40 to 80% of your list. So if you see that, hey, I have 100 complaints and you got a big Google list, you probably have 200 and you got a red flag going on and there's some things to shift. So watch your complaint rates. The next thing is list hygiene. I can't stress this enough. I've got a client right now who is getting in good with Google, everything from Hotmail, no opens, no clicks. They had 75 spam traps in Hotmail that they were hitting. We cleaned their list, did 3 or 4 good sends to the clean list and with that were engaged. Boom, they're getting through to Hotmail now. And again, for list hygiene, hygiene.clean13.com. It's the only solution I recommend because they actually send email to test the servers. It's the most accurate that's out there. Last thing you got to do today, content. Pay attention to it. Rethink the way you create and use your content. Using tools that send your blog out in an email, I don't recommend that. I don't. I see it killing spam filters every time. Take 20 minutes, summarize the blog, and entice them to go there. Because what's going to happen? It's going to get an open. It's going to get a click, which drives engagement. More importantly,
if your blog post is good and the people that are on your list want to get your stuff.
Well,
right?
true, but think about it. People aren't going to buy from your email, but if you're able to get them to your blog, now you've got links on the page that they can click on. Now you've got pop-ups that you can bring up to take them to next steps. So think about it like that. Get them, rethink the way you create your content. Look at it as the bait, not as the hook, the rod, and the reel.
No one has ever sold anything from email.
Really haven't.
Think about that.
They've enticed.
They've got people to take the next step, but transactions don't happen over email.
Nope. Well, unless you're just sending like, here's the link to buy because you've already talked to them, and then, but even that doesn't happen.
Because
they click the link, they go to the page and go there.
To pay the money, right?
So Jordan's right. I'm wrong. There we go.
The order form's on a web page somewhere, right?
Right.
Pretty much. And then, from the content, see the prior lists. Everything plays together. And remember, not one of these is a silver bullet, but any one of them off can get you to the spam folder. So that's the majority of the content for today. Again, my name is Evan. This is Jordan Hatch. We've got Adrian Savage. I think we've got a little bit of time for questions. So
probably just a little bit because I think we're already over. So
didn't we give like a 98% chance we're going over?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Cool.
So anyway, all right. So Roxanne says, what if you're emailing a link to your landing page or freebie opt-in?
That's totally fine, but don't have like this 4 or 5 paragraphs and use the same link 6 times. That's 6 links. It's not one link. It's not about how many destinations, about how many links. And then also just make sure that, your landing page lives on your domain. That's only going to help you. So spend that extra time if you're using a third-party landing tool to map the DMS over so it goes to your domain. So if you're using Infusionsoft and Keap landing pages, you can do that. If you're using third-party tools, you can do that. Just keep it on your site. Keep it on your domain.
Yeah, and one mistake that I see people make is they'll use like Bitly or something like that to shorten the link to go to the long, domain name, and that's dumb and not smart because that's what spammers do, right? So the way that you can get around that, if you've got a really long domain or a long URL that you don't want to put the actual full URL, make it a link. Make it a link that says click here to buy, or not
don't
that.
use click here, but you
know what I mean. But
read the blog here, and then you embed. This actually goes to the next question. Embed the full link inside of the text.
Right.
So
yeah,
there we can go. We got Mike's question.
People don't need to see the link, right? In most cases.
No, you don't. It's your job is to get them there. It doesn't matter,
right?
What it says.
Yeah. If you're using,
give them a clear call to action. That's what it is, isn't it? So no, assume that your audience needs a little bit of guidance. They almost need to be smacked between the eyes, saying, right, do this. So you say, click here to buy, click here to read now, or whatever. Be very, very clear call to action. They don't need to see the link and the URL, do they?
No.
No.
Yeah, and they don't need to see it 17 times either.
Right. So another couple of questions are related is, like using PrettyLink and things like that. So PrettyLink is a plugin for WordPress. I only use WordPress for anything. I don't use ClickFunnels. I don't use, anything but WordPress. And one of the primary reasons is because, number one, I can make a landing page that looks just as good as any of those other tools. But 2, I have control over what those URLs or what the URL is. So if it's, jordanhatch.com/opt-in or /webinar, or whatever, I have complete control over that.
Yeah.
So, pretty links, it's almost the same thing. One of the other reasons why you don't want to use a redirect like that, like even using pretty links, is that email providers are actually following those links. They don't just look at the link and say, okay, you're good. They'll actually follow the link and see where it actually ends up to make sure that it's not a phishing expedition, right?
Now, real quick, Jordan, sorry to cut you off. I'm actually doing some testing on this week because I have a client who does a lot of affiliate offerings, and we're testing the usage because they want tracking. And for most legitimate marketers, they're using things like Bitly so they can get additional tracking metrics on clicks and things like that. So I actually message me next week. I'll know a little bit more on how big of a difference is there between going straight to the domain if you're using a third-party domain especially, or if you're using a pretty link with a redirect in there. So right. I'm in the middle of testing that.
Cool.
Glyphs, is that probably GIFs?
No, I think it's
I think emojis, isn't
emojis,
it? And stuff like that.
Yeah.
Emojis in the subject lines, no, those shouldn't be getting you flagged as spam. I thought that might have been GIFs. Images can. So you got to think when you've got a lot of images inside of your emails, there's a couple things they look at. One of it, they look at the size of the image, like, and not just the recipient, not just the mailbox providers looking at, but like, if emails take too long to load, like people are going to just disengage and go. Secondarily, the mailbox providers are looking at things like text to image ratio. So if you've got a really, really big image, that's going to take more text to balance that out. And if you've got more image than you have text, that's a flag, and that's going to get you caught up in content filters. So make sure.
And the other problem as well, of course, is that people, the spammers will put lots of text inside an image because the spam filters can't detect what's in the image, right? So that's the other.
But even that
if
is
you put lots of
changing.
image in an email, then it looks like you're spamming.
Yeah, I mean, even that is changing. Like, it's not hard to do optical character recognition with machine learning to look at an image and find out what text is there. That's how the spammers are actually beating CAPTCHA codes. So
yeah, it's crazy what's going on out there, but just pay attention to it. Shrink your images. There's a free tool. tinypng.com is the website. It's a free tool. Upload your JPEG or PNG, and it'll minimize it down. So that makes a big difference there.
Okay, so actually, there's one question there, and I've got a question that came in the comments from my session yesterday that I want us to talk about just for a few minutes. First question is from Mike. It says, how would you use a suppression list?
Great question. So there's a couple ways. One, you can tag them and then have all of your campaigns look for that tag. And if a person has that tag, it just pulls them out, removes them, keeps them opted out. You can look at it that way. Also, inside of Keap or Infusionsoft, and I don't know if it's in Keap Pro or not, but if you go to the admin settings, there's actually a spam filter. So you can add email addresses or domains into the spam filter, and it will block them from coming into your system. So there's lots of different ways you can use suppression lists. You can also, as we talked about with Facebook and Google, you can upload those to those and use those as audiences not to include, so exclusionary audiences. So lots of ways you can use suppression data. I'll cut that short because I know Jordan wants to session jump and bring stuff from his session into mine and
it's
bring
not.
that
No,
over.
it's related, right? I'm not trying to
I know.
hijack.
I'm gonna have fun with you. You're right next to me.
I know. So, okay. So the question that I saw, I think it was in Facebook from my session yesterday, was like, what are we allowed to do? I'm wondering how, like the person wrote, I'm wondering how someone like Netflix and these big businesses are getting to the inbox because they're doing some things that you guys are saying not to do. So I've had the time to think about it. I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, but what are your thoughts there about for example, Netflix can send an email about a new show that they've got, and it's full of images and text and links and whatever else, and it goes right to the inbox.
A lot of that's on reputation. When you've got, let's say 5 million people that you're mailing to, and you've got good engagement, you've got more flexibility in terms of what you can get away with. And if people are completely used to receiving those types of emails and engage and click on those emails, the machine learning picks that up and will apply that knowledge to new subscribers coming in. So when you're doing everything perfectly, you've got a great reputation, you're doing the right things, you can get away with more than if you're not. Now, it's not telling you to go game the system and cheat, because you can't. But the more good you're doing, the more leeway you get.
Adrian, do you have any thoughts, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's a big part of it, because you only see what gets into your inbox. You don't see all the emails that from that same provider that might not be getting into the inbox, because one of the things that's really big now is that all this spam filtering, everything else, is not global. It's personalized to every single individual mailbox. So if you open every single Netflix mail, then guess what? They're all going to appear in your inbox.
Yep.
I never open any emails from Netflix, and guess what? They appear somewhere in promotions, and I never actually see them ever. So just because you see something doesn't mean that's what everyone else is seeing. So that's why things like, seed accounts, test email addresses, things like that, you can't really infer that much from the results you see, because every single mailbox provider and every single mailbox that provider runs is going to give you different results.
It will.
So
I want to
you
take
don't
something.
really know what's happening.
Yeah, and I want to take something you said, because a lot of people freak out that they land in the promotions folder. Promotions folder isn't always a bad thing. A lot of times it'll save you. But here's what you got to realize. 80% of people check their email on a mobile phone. Okay? That number is hard. Adrian's always in front of his office, so he's usually checking it on a desktop, most likely. But most people are checking their email on a mobile phone. The majority of mobile phone users are not using a Yahoo app or a Gmail app or a Hotmail app. They're using the native mailbox app on their phone. Native mailbox apps on the phone don't see folders. So if you've got something that's going into the promotions folder in Gmail, in your Apple Mail, it's going to the inbox because that's the only thing it sees. So don't freak out if emails are landing in promotions. One, if it's going there, it's probably a promotional mail. But secondly, there's more likely than not it's going to get seen. So
Yeah.
Jordan, your turn.
Yep.
Yeah, so you guys both hit the two things that I was going to say is that, Netflix is sending in one email blast what you would send in probably 20 lifetimes, right? They've got 110 something million users that they're sending emails to. So they go and say, hey, we got this new, show that released and we think you'll like it. Number one, they're going to filter that down based on what they know of what you've watched in Netflix, and they're only going to send that to the people that they think are going to love the new show, right? So that's one piece of it, is that they're doing things. They're not just going and saying, "Oh, blast 110 million people." They're doing things. They know what you're going to like.
Targeting, segmentation,
right?
right email to the right
They're
person.
doing all the other stuff behind the scenes that you don't see to get that email delivered and opened and clicked and all of those other things that we're saying are so important. And then, like Adrian said too, it's always an individualized thing, even once the email gets delivered, right? So.
Yeah, and that's huge. Just because it lands in your inbox or your promotions tab doesn't mean that's where it's going to land for the next guy over who receives it. So, Jordan, I know we've gone a little bit over today. We've run some time. Sorry, but
bad.
We're not at the same time. But don't forget, tomorrow is the last episode in this series where Adrian Savage is going to be really diving into tools for engagement, why they're so important, how to use those. So make sure we're going to be here, same bat time, same bat channel. You can find us in the Keap official user group. You can find this on YouTube. If you're not able to catch it live, beauty of social media, it'll be there tomorrow for a replay. But please take the time to go through this. If you have questions, type them in the comments below. At the beginning of this, I had my email up on the screen. I know I'm probably going to opening Pandora's box, but shoot me an email. This is stuff that most people don't know about. And, there's that saying, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. We're here to help open your eyes, to help educate you on what you have to be paying attention to. Now, if you want additional help with that stuff, I provide services. Jordan provides services. Adrian provides services. We can all help you, but we're here to educate you now. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for taking the time. Ducey, Paige, and Crystal, thanks for having us here. And here's to delivering emails. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, great, guys. We'll see you all tomorrow.